Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Tim Kahn, head of Dimensional Fund Advisors Retirement Distribution Team, and I'm pleased to bring you session number 4 in a very special 5-part webinar series we're calling The Economics Approach to Financial Planning. For those just joining us today, let's start off with some housekeeping. First, each session is scheduled for 1.5 hours, and we aim to complete our comments at the 1-hour mark and provide you 30 minutes for a robust yet optional question and answer session. I'll be monitoring those questions, so please feel free to submit them as they arise or during the final 30 minutes. If you're joining us today as a financial professional and would like to receive continuing education, all you need to do is stay with us for the 1 hour and respond to each of the CE prompts. Today's slides are available for download from the Event Resources tab. Also available in the sidebar is the registration link for tomorrow's session. In our closing email to you today, we will provide you with a brief survey, so please give us your candid thoughts and comments so we can continually improve the series tomorrow. Now, a brief overview of our topics. Today, we will be addressing the secrets to maximizing lifetime Social Security benefits, and tomorrow, on February 10th, we'll focus on finding alpha, raising a household living standard at no risk. Our presenters today are Larry Kotlikoff, Professor of Economics at Boston University and President of Economic Security Planning Incorporated, and Rick Miller, Founder and CEO of Sensible Financial Planning, which delivers economics-based financial advice to hundreds of clients using Larry's Maxify planning software as a central focus. With that, a big thank you all for joining us today, and let's kick it off. In preparation for today's topic, I did do some research for Larry and Rick, and interesting notes: Social Security is, for most Americans, the largest financial asset, and second for a majority of most Americans. The Social Security system has 13 benefits and 2,728 rules. Today, Larry and Rick will be discussing the significant amount of resources that you can add to your lifetime balance by best claiming, and also how economics planning can help us. So if we look at our outline, today we are talking about the secrets to maximizing lifetime Social Security benefits. Important note, on session 3, we had a weather call due to an ice storm here in Austin, Texas, so we're looking to reschedule that. And tomorrow we'll be focusing on finding alpha, raising a household living standard. So with that, I want to turn over to my good friend Rick to talk about the importance of Social Security. Rick, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. And let's move, if we can, to the first slide, just the introduction.
There you go.
Which I think makes or reiterates some points that you made. For most people, Social Security is the largest asset that they have. I would amend that to say for younger people, for people in their 30s and 40s, their largest asset is their human capital, their earning power. But as people get closer to retirement, Social Security is, for most, probably their largest asset. And it's of comparable size or larger than their home and their savings, their retirement savings and other savings. And while Social Security is their largest or one of their largest assets, unfortunately, people may not devote the attention that they should to making Social Security claiming decisions, and therefore they may make mistakes that are very expensive. Okay, our next slide, please, Tim. So we're going to talk today about 12 secrets to maximizing lifetime Social Security benefits. And moving quickly to the first one, Tim, the next one is know your benefits, know thy benefits, which is a sort of a commandment. And we're going to see as we go through this webinar that benefits are available to many people in many circumstances. So Social Security is much more than just retirement benefits. And because the system is so complex, and because, as Tim pointed out, there are so many rules, it's a mistake to assume that we can all be experts in Social Security benefits. So I would know thy benefits is Larry's language. I would perhaps modify it a little bit and say, if there's a loss of income or absence of income, I would suggest that you assume that there might be benefits, there might be Social Security benefits, and immediately you should check with an advisor, Social Security itself, or software, because there's a good amount of Social Security software out there, and Larry will describe some of it today, to see if you are eligible. Because as we'll see, it's up to the individual to file a claim. Social Security is not going to look out for you. Okay, Tim, with the next slide, we'll see the first of the first of two slides that outline these Social Security benefits. As I said before, people think of retirement benefits when they think of Social Security, but Social Security also offers benefits for disability, for children that are affected by the death, retirement, or disability of their parents, for parents who are affected by the death, retirement, or disability of their children, and for disabled children. And I'm going to ask Larry if he would walk through some of these, because Larry is an expert in Social Security. I dabble.
Okay. Well, the system has 2,728 rules, as Tim was indicating in their handbook, about these 13 benefits. So think about it. How do you make 2,728 rules about 13 things you can collect? If you go to New Zealand, they have a Social Security system and has one rule. You reach age 65, you get a check. It's the same check for everybody. Here in the US, 13 benefits, 2,728 rules in the handbook. But then if you go to their operating manual system, what's called the program operating manual system, which is online, you can just check this whenever you want. So Google for POMS, you'll see literally hundreds of thousands of rules about the 2,728 rules. So we have the most complicated system, I think, known to man. This is a bureaucrat's, fantasy to develop a system that's this complicated about this small number of benefits. But the benefits, as Rick was saying, cover, obviously your own retirement benefit. You can get benefits if you're a spouse, a low-earning spouse, and you're low earning not just in absolute terms, but also relative to your partner. There's benefits for divorcees. If you were married for 10 or more years, you can collect as a divorced spouse, or if your former spouse has died, you can collect as a widow, a divorced widow or widower, provided you haven't remarried before age 60. So here you have two examples of two gotchas. Social Security is full of gotchas with respect to these benefits. You have to be married for 10 years, and to get a divorced widow's benefit, you have to be, if you're married, you have to have married after age 60. Now, why is it that we have rules like this, that you have to be married for 10 years and that you can't remarry before age 60? Well, the whole system is highly sexist. There's no question about it. It was put into place by men back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, these rules that, and they wanted to get back at wives who divorced their husbands, or that was clearly what was going on here. So the whole system is full of sexism, but that's the reality. And it is symmetric with respect to males and females, but because females are generally the home, taking care of the kids and earning less money, they're differentially affected by this set of ostensibly neutral rules. We also have clearly, for people that are married at the time their spouses die, there's widow's benefits and widower benefits. There's, as Rick mentioned, disability benefits. There's for yourself. There's if you have disabled children.
Okay, Tim, so I think the next slide.
Yeah, they can collect benefits as disabled children as off of the parent's record, but there's a gotcha there. You have to be collecting your own retirement benefit in order to give your child a benefit on your record. You also, if you want to give a spouse a benefit on your record, a spousal benefit, or even an ex-spouse who you're married to for 10 years, a divorced spousal benefit, you have to be collecting your retirement benefit. You can also give benefits to young children who are under age 19 if they're still in school. Then if you've got a spouse who is collecting, again, you have to be taking a retirement benefit for this to happen. If you've got a young spouse who's, let's say, taking care of a young child, or maybe could be an older spouse, maybe you've adopted children late in life, and you've got young children at home, that spouse can collect what's called a child and care spousal benefit until the child is age 16. At that point, the child and care spousal benefit goes away. But if the child is disabled, and they have to be disabled from childhood, we're not talking about a disability that occurs after you're 22, but before that, then you can have the spousal and care benefit being provided. The spouse who's taking care of the disabled child, but the child has to be being cared for in the house. It can't be cared for in an institution. Yet another one of these rules, then that child can be collecting a disabled child benefit. But any supplemental security income that the child is receiving is going to be lost, or taxed dollar for dollar. And also the child might be collecting a disability benefit on their own work record, and that would also be taxed dollar for dollar. So that's important to understand as well. You might think, gee, let me take my benefit early. I'll get my spouse who's taking care of the disabled child a benefit, and get the child the disabled child benefit. And then I don't realize that until later that in doing this, I've lowered my lifetime benefits, but my child has lost their supplemental security income or their own disability benefit because, or they've lost the equivalent by getting less disabled child benefits from Social Security. There's also benefits for divorced widows and widowers who have young children or disabled children. They're called mother and father benefits. Or for widows, not divorced widows or widowers who have young children or disabled children. They're kind of the equivalent, the counterpart to spousal and care, child and care spousal benefits. These are like widower and care child spousal benefits if you're taking care of a kid. There's also a small death benefit when somebody dies to help with the burial expenses. It's only like $275. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. It's very small. And then there's parent benefits, which are, I'll just give you an example. My mom lived till 98. I was the main provider financially in the sense that I took her as a dependent on my tax return. Although my brother and sister were sharing in the costs, she was my legal dependent. And had I died, she could have collected 75% of my full retirement benefit. My brother and sister knew nothing about this. Had I told them about it, I think they probably quickly forgot about it. But had I passed away, they could have gotten her significant monthly benefit as a parent benefit. Almost nobody knows about this. So there's lots of benefits, and there's a tremendous amount of money here to be had by getting all this stuff straight, especially with the retirement benefit, because your benefit, as we'll talk about, at age 70 is 76% higher if your patient wait to collect it then versus getting it at 62. That's the earliest you can collect it. So it's 76% higher adjusted for inflation if you're patient and wait. And then we'll talk some more about that as we move along here. Let me turn things over to Rick to talk about, well, actually, I got one more slide I want to mention, then we'll turn things back to Rick, which is use it or lose it. That's what it is. That's the story when it comes to Social Security benefits. I had a gentleman give me a call. This has happened actually a couple times, 75 years old or thereabouts, calls up and says, I'm still working. Can I collect my Social Security benefits? And I said, oh my God, yeah, there's been no advantage for you to wait after age 70, and they're not going to give you the benefits that you didn't apply for. they'll give you six months retroactive benefits, but you're now 5 years out, so you've lost 4.5 years of benefits. And by the way, you're telling me you're a high earner, so you've in effect lost about $150,000 just because you didn't actually know to go into the office or to go online or to give them a telephone call and apply for this benefit that was yours because you've been paying from age 16. You and your employer have been contributing 12.4% of your pay year in and year out since age 16. That amounts to a lot of money. So there's no wonder that Social Security benefits are a huge deal when you put together all the contributions. And just one last comment, which is that Congress calls the half the contributions, half the FICA payroll tax that we pay a employer contribution, and says the other half is an employee contribution. But make no mistake, that's just Congress, politicians trying to pretend that they're not taxing us to the full extent that they are. But the employer is not giving anybody, no employer is paying their employees' taxes out of the kindness of their heart. Mm-hmm. They're taking it out of the employees' take-home pay, paying them less because they have to send a check into the government. And in point of fact, both parts of the payroll tax are being mailed jointly or electronically sent to Uncle Sam. So there's no physical distinction here at all. It's just a word game, but we're really paying 12.4% of our pay over our entire lifetime. That accumulates up to a lot of money, no matter whether the system is unfunded, which it is, versus fully funded, which it's not. It's still, there's benefits connected to this big contribution, and they're significant. So, Rick, let me turn it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Larry. And Tim, could we have the next slide, please?
Absolutely. Maybe a quick question for either Rick or Larry at this point on the theme of retroactive benefits. One of our folks listening in has a son who is disabled as a child. The benefit was denied on this person's record. Is there a time frame which an appeal can be filed with Social Security? Is that similar to that 6 months, either Larry or Rick? Any thoughts on that?
I think there are dates by which you need to file appeals. As far as I know, I've never actually gotten into the nitty-gritties of these dates, but I'm pretty sure there are deadlines. So I would not wait to make any appeal of any kind of a judgment. I would go right in and immediately file for an appeal. And Social Security has its own administrative judges. Right. That are basically paid Social Security employees who are always judging, basically in Social Security's favor. But if you appeal enough, you end up with a federal judge who will likely be more reasonable. But it's a real, gauntlet to get to appeal. And Social Security is making mistakes all the time in awarding benefits or deciding that they shouldn't have awarded, I'll just give you one quick example of a horror story. I write about Social Security horror stories all the time. This one lady became disabled. She had never written anything. She decides to write a children's book. It becomes a bestseller. She doesn't become super rich. You can be a bestseller but not become super rich. Anyway, she gets some money for a while, and then 10 years later, she gets a bill from Social Security. She called up all the time, every year, to Social Security, said, look, I'm getting disability benefits, but I'm also earning some royalties. Can I still collect disability? They said royalties, they don't count. Earned income, if you were getting earned income, you couldn't collect disability, but because you're earning too much, but royalty, not a problem. 10 years later, she gets a bill in the mail for $300,000. She says, what's this about? They say, ultimately, well, you gave a couple of lectures about your book at the local library, and therefore you engaged in some labor effort, in order to make this royalty. So we're now going to declare this labor income. She appeals through several appeals. She ends up in front of a Social Security judge who says, you know what? Well, we gave you the wrong information over the phone and in meetings, and that's our mistake. But because Social Security's overarching rule is that our mistake is your mistake. I can't undo this requirement that you repay $300,000 based on our having made a mistake. It's your mistake because we made it for you. So therefore, the only thing I can do is look at whether you're poor enough to qualify. And she, again, had spent all her money from royalties, so she was banked living at a very low level. So the judge asked for all her records, including her cable bill. And he says, you have I read the entire decision. He says, you have a really fancy cable plan. It's costing $170 a month. You have all these channels. Therefore, I've decided you're not poor. Therefore, you have to repay the $300,000. Swear to God, this is exactly what happened. So this is not a warm and fuzzy institution, but they do owe us money, and we need to make sure we get what's ours. But anyway, back over to Rick.
Very good. Thank you. Over to you, Rick.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Tim. So let's go to the next slide, which should be 8, which is patients pays. And as the slide says, benefits are much higher at 70 than at 62. So that leads us to, and they increase each year, by the way. So that leads us to the next slide, which is when to start Social Security retirement benefits. And this is one of the largest financial decisions that an individual will ever make. Selecting early versus late can have an impact in hundreds of thousands of dollars on your lifetime balance sheet. And many households struggle with this decision. And in my experience, most households use an investment framework rather than an insurance framework for making this decision. And by using the wrong framework, again, in my experience, my sense is that people often come to an incorrect decision and a decision that costs them a lot of money. Next slide, please, Tim. So as I indicated, Social Security benefits increase each year from age 62 to age 70. And the percentage increases are quite significant. Now, when Social Security benefits, if you look at your letter from Social Security, when they talk about benefits at each age, they emphasize that at full retirement age, which right now is varying between 66 and 67, depending upon when you were born, but for this particular couple is 67. Social Security's letter highlights or emphasizes that benefits increase to full retirement age, or there's a penalty, but after full retirement age, then you get extra benefits. They're delayed retirement credits, as if there's an important distinction between before full retirement age and after full retirement age. A better way to look at it, a more accurate way to look at it, is that benefits increase each year from age 62 to age 70. And here is where people tend to begin their investment analysis. They say,
if you wait to collect,
if you wait to collect, yes.
And these are real increases too. These are above and beyond inflation.
Right.
Adjustments.
So people look at this, and if we look at our example, Steve might say, well, if I wait until 63, that's going to cost me $15,065. And he might say, if I wait 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, I can add up how much it costs me in benefits, and I get so much a year in additional benefits. And then people say, well, how long do I have to live before deferring is a good decision? So they calculate the advantage and they run it out to a particular age, and they decide on what age they should choose. And then they decide whether they'll actually live that long, and they make the decision on that basis. And there are two fundamental problems with that approach. The first one is that people are not good, they're not accurate at forecasting how long they're going to live. And there's an enormous amount of variation in how long people will live. And the second point, and for me, the more important point, is that I would argue that Social Security retirement benefits don't really qualify as an investment. They are insurance. And so one should think about them from an insurance perspective. So let's, Tim, if we look at the next slide, see why I would say that.
Let me just kind of add to this for a second. You could get exactly right what your life expectancy is based on all your medical history and so forth. But it really doesn't matter because you're not going to die on time. You're not going to die at your life expectancy. So when Rick's talking about insurance, he's talking about the risk that you're going to live to your maximum age of life, which might be 100. So anyway, you'll now explain why this is crazy to be thinking of it this way as if you're an insurance company.
Okay. So thanks, Larry. That's helpful. So if we think about the standard items for which investment analysis is appropriate, you might think about stocks or bonds or certificates of deposit. Those are investments. Those make payments that are independent of what happens to you, and in particular of how long you live. When we're thinking about, though, insurance payments, those are contingent on what happens to you. Life insurance, all claims and benefits are contingent on a bad outcome. You don't get paid unless you die. As an insurance colleague of mine once said, life insurance is the only game you have to lose to win. If you think about health insurance, health insurance makes payments if you get sick, but only if you get sick. Car insurance pays off only if you have an accident. Homeowners insurance pays off only if you have a bad outcome. Well, what about Social Security? Next slide, please, Tim. So is Social Security an investment or is it insurance? The benefit payments continue as long as you live. They stop when you die. They're contingent on you living. And just like insurance, they pay when you have, and here I put in parentheses, a financially bad outcome, when you live a long time. So the proper way, as I would suggest as a financial advisor, to think about Social Security is that it is an inflation-protected annuity. Currently, it's the only inflation-protected annuity that's available in the United States. And so the appropriate analysis is an annuity analysis, viewing the foregone payments as premiums, annuity premiums, and the increased future payments as incremental annuities. And when you do that analysis, the payout rates are terrific. As an annuity purchase, Social Security retirement benefits are really a no-brainer. And that goes, if you're thinking about deferring from 62 to 63, and then from 63 to 64, all the way up to 69 to 70. And for most people now, not all, but for most people, taking it 70 is the best decision.
And let me just put it a slightly different way, which is if you wait from, let's say, 62 to 70, you're giving up something every year. You're giving up a benefit, a low benefit every year. That's really the premium you're paying for this annuity, which is the higher benefit, the 76% higher benefit you're going to get starting at 70. So that's the sense in which you can buy an annuity from Social Security on these fantastic terms. Every year you wait, you're in effect paying a price to buy a higher annuity. And so that's, there we go.
Right. And it used to be possible to compare the purchase of the Social Security annuity to commercially available inflation-protected annuities. And Social Security was always a much better deal, much better. And now it's really the only game in town as an inflation-protected annuity. Okay. All right, Tim, next slide. Thank you. And Larry, I think you were going to talk about maximizing household benefits and not individual benefits.
Yeah, so Social Security is providing, as we said, these 13 benefits, but dependent benefits that your spouse or your kids or your ex-spouse can collect on your record, depend on what you do. Like, for example, you can't get if you're alive, you can't get their dependent benefits going unless you take your retirement benefit. And if we're talking about survivor benefits that go to children, disabled children or young children, or to spouses or ex-spouses, you have to die. Okay, so there's this interconnection. So you want to think about household benefits, not the individual benefits, because what you do, for example, if I take my benefits early, now my spouse can take her child and care spouse benefit or her own spousal benefit on my record. If I don't take my benefit early, or if I don't, if I'm at a point where I can take it and I don't take it, she may have the option to collect a spouse benefit or divorce spouse benefit. Well, a spouse benefit. The divorcees the divorce benefit isn't contingent on what I do. They've kept that separate so that people will not get into huge fights and try and screw their exes by not doing things that can help their exes. But for my spouse, let's say I'm 65 and my spouse is 63, and if I take my retirement benefit, she can take her spouse benefit. If I don't take my retirement benefit, she cannot take her spouse benefit. She can take her own reduced or retirement benefit, but she can't get anything on my record until I actually start collecting. So that's the need for having an analysis that really takes into account these interconnections and maximizes the household's joint lifetime benefits rather than the individual benefits. The secret number 5, let's move on to that one, is that if you've taken your benefits early, because maybe you got laid off during COVID, for example, and you go back to work, or maybe you've just not gone back to work and you've reached full retirement age, you can do something called suspend your benefit and start collecting delayed retirement credits. And that's going to be 8% per year. It doesn't compound, but if we're talking about, if your full retirement age was 67, which is the true for anybody who's born after year 1960, their full retirement age is age 67. So if I reach 67, having taken my benefits early for whatever reason, and maybe I decide that maybe I've gotten married to somebody who's got some money and I don't need to live off of my Social Security, I can suspend my benefit and just wait till 70 to start it up again. It will be 8% higher for each year that it's suspended. So it will be 24% higher at age 70, adjusted for inflation. So this suspension of benefits is an option. If you've taken your benefit early, you can kind of recoup what I view as, in general, a mistake by suspending it for retirement age. Let's go to the next slide, Tim. Secret number 6 is that there's one type of benefit that depends on what you actually receive yourself, as opposed to your full retirement benefit. The spousal benefits, the benefits for the kids, the benefits for the spousal, the divorced spousal benefit, they all depend on your full retirement benefit, even if you don't take your benefit at full retirement age. But the benefit to widows and divorced widows and widowers and divorced widowers, that depends on what you were actually collecting. And they can get the larger of their own retirement benefit and your the benefit that you were collecting if you pass away. So that's so you're waiting to collect to get your benefit to be higher means that you're going to be increasing the widow's or divorced widow benefit for these spouses or ex-spouses. So that's an extra incentive to be patient to collect. Now, your kids can collect survivor benefits if they're young and on your record, and they can also collect benefits if they're disabled. But it's based on your full retirement benefit, not based on what you were actually collecting. And the other thing to be said here is that if you've taken your benefit early, before your own full retirement age, and you die, then the benefit formula that is going to be facing your widow or divorced widow is going to be different than if you haven't taken your widow's benefit early. And that can impact a decision about when you should take if you're a widow or a divorced widow and you're in that situation where you can collect benefits on your ex, then you have to make a decision, should I take my retirement benefit first or my widow's benefit or divorced widow benefit first, or vice versa? And you can easily lose your shirt by making the wrong choice here. And I have an example of this that I'll convey. We have an example shortly we'll convey. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, this is the illustration. So Jane, let's say, goes to the local Social Security office. They ask her if she'd like to file for all her available benefits. She says yes. Let's say she's 62. And this is now a case where she's fallen victim to Social Security's worst fraud, which has been investigated by Social Security's own Inspector General. And he's just reported in print that Social Security has defrauded 13,000 widows out of $130 million over recent decades by running this fraud. Now, whether they intentionally ran it or accidentally ran it, they're not fixing it. Let's put it that way. This report came out 2 years ago. The Inspector General said, fix this, pay these people what you owe them. They didn't do it. So here's what the story is. If I'm 62, I can file for my widow's benefit. Let's say that's $2,001 a month. I could file for my retirement benefit, $2,000 a month. They're both going to be reduced because I'm taking them early. But if I don't file for my retirement, I'm going to get the larger of the two. That's the way the system works. But if I don't file for my retirement benefit, it'll be like I never asked for it. It'll be like I delayed to taking it until let's say I wait till 70 to file for it. So I'll get the 2,000 times 1.76. I'll get this benefit that's dramatically higher. If I go in there and they say, would you like to file for all your benefits? And I say yes, and they check this box for me that says I'm filing for my retirement benefit as well as my widow's benefit. Just by checking a box on a piece of paper, I will not receive any increase in my retirement benefit. So I'll show up at age 70, I'll say, okay, I've been receiving a check, which represents my widow's benefit because I got the larger of the two numbers, but I didn't collect my retirement benefit. I'd like to get that plus all the 76% higher factor. And they're going to say, sorry, you checked the box back when you were 62. And you didn't know anything. You didn't understand what was going on. Some Social Security agent might have just checked it automatically without even asking you. So you have to be very careful. So it might be optimal to take your retirement benefit second, later, not at the same time, or it might be optimal to take and take your widow's benefit first, or it might be optimal to go the other way and take your widow's benefit, maybe even your retirement benefit first at 62 and your widow's benefit later on. And when you do that, whether you should wait till full retirement age to take your widow's benefit or take it before that depends on whether your deceased spouse took or ex-spouse took their retirement benefit early. So that's the complication, but you don't want to be taking them at the same time because you can lose a lot of money. Now, let me just kind of indicate how much we're talking about here. Yeah, by filing, in this case, by filing for both her widow's benefit and retirement benefit at the same time, Jane earns the larger of the two, and the rest of her life she gets $29,157. By just checking this box, she's stuck with $29,157. If she had waited, if she had not checked that box, she would get $29,157 right up through age 70, and then she would get $44,960 thereafter. Now, if you go to the next slide here, Tim, there's a huge amount of money here on the table. It's $416,000. So just not checking that box means you get $416,000 more. And if you do check that box, or if somebody checks it for you without your knowledge, you're losing almost $500,000. Let's go to, and that's, in this case, this particular example, that's the difference between a 20% higher living standard from age 62 on for the rest of her life than not. So it's a huge amount of money measured in terms of living standard. Let me have Rick take us through secret number 7.
Don't divorce too early. So this one is especially for the lower earning spouse. And I think that this is most powerful in the case where you have a high earning spouse and a low earning spouse. If a couple divorces before 10 years of marriage, then the low earning spouse would not have access to the, as a divorcee, would not have access to the higher earning spouse's retirement benefits. I have an example from early in my career, one of my proudest moments. We had a client who had unfortunately not had most of her income reported to Social Security and had not paid taxes, Social Security taxes on that income. And she was ready to retire, and her Social Security benefits were very small. And at that time, I was very proud of this fact. I asked her if she had ever been married, and she said, yes, she had. And I said, were you married for 10 years? And she said, yes, she had been married for 10 years. And I said, so you can get Social Security benefits on your former husband's record. And she said, no, that's not possible. And then she said, I don't even know his Social Security number. And I said, I bet you could find it. And she found it. And she went to Social Security, and she got a substantial retirement benefit. It made it possible for her to live at a much more reasonable living standard than she would have been able to enjoy had she not had those benefits.
Yeah.
So she would have lost that entirely. She wouldn't have had access to them if they divorced at 9 years, 11 months, and 29 days.
Right. And by the way, you don't have to be married to, you don't have to be living together. You could, separate, live in separate homes, as long as you don't actually file divorce papers until the day after you've been married for 10 years, you're going to have this benefit available, this divorce spousal benefit. And then when your client's ex died, she would get an even higher benefit. She would get what the ex was collecting in most cases, unless he took his retirement benefit early, but it would still be significant and more than her spouse benefit by a mile. Secret number 8, we're going to go quickly through the rest of the secrets to get us to the Q&As at the top of the hour. The earnings test, this is a huge secret. Most people think that when let's say somebody gets was furloughed during COVID, and they started taking Social Security because they didn't have any other income. And now they get called back to work, and they find out that every dollar they earn over a low limit, it's about $20,000. I mean, it's not low for low income low wage workers, but for middle income people, 20,000 is not that much. So if you earn beyond that, you're losing 50 cents on the dollar. Every dollar you earn, you lose 50 cents of Social Security benefits, a huge marginal tax. You add to that the marginal tax from the federal income tax, the marginal tax from the state income tax. We have sales taxes, which really represent a tax on our labor earnings because we earn money and then we go to the grocery store to buy something, and some of it we give away to the government in the form of sales taxes. You put all that together, people think they have no incentive whatsoever to work. But in fact, what Social Security does when you reach full retirement age is they raise your benefit where you lost benefits due to the earning. If you do go back to work and you do pay this 50 cents on the dollar tax, you lose the benefits. Social Security is going to raise your permanent benefit level in light of all the benefits they took away from you. And they're not telling you this. They're not telling you that they've got this kind of pretend tax here that's inducing people to stay retired when they could go back and to work and have a more fulfilling life and have a much higher living standard because they're not having to finance so many years of retirement. This is like one of the worst public policies in the world, and it's in place, and it's been in place for years. And you need to understand that it's, for most people, losing benefits from working represents a hoax because it's going to come back. The lost benefits will be repaid in something called the adjustment of the reduction factor. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Secret set 9 is that Social Security is about 2.5 years of GDP bankrupt in the red. Their unfunded liability is far beyond the federal debt. That's according to the trustees report that just came out a couple months ago. So this means that they're going to probably have to raise taxation of Social Security benefits or cut benefits. But the gain from waiting is so big that even if they cut benefits by a quarter starting like in 2030, it would still behoove you to wait to collect. Almost everybody would behoove them to wait to collect at age 70. Here's secret 10. Should you take, if you're cash poor, you retire, should you take your Social Security, your Social Security benefits before you take your IRA money, or vice versa? If you have money in an IRA, maybe you have money in the stock market. Well, the stock market is risky. On a risk-adjusted basis, it's yielding nothing, okay? So the stock market is so risky that people are willing to earn nothing on inflation index bonds that the Treasury is issuing. So that's the risk adjustment right there. You can buy stocks and suffer the risk or experience the risk, or you can buy something safe and get a zero real return. So on a risk adjusted basis, apples to apples, Social Security's got a huge real return. The stock market has a zero return as I speak as of today, right at this minute. So you want to take your retirement account money, spend that to live off of, and get this much higher Social Security benefit, which is a sure thing and inflation protected. And given that inflation is going nuts these days, you want to have more of your resources in the form of inflation protection. And you also have longevity protection, because if you live to 100, the real risk is not dying. I'm going to say this as a hard-nosed economist. Death is a financial blessing because you don't have bills that you don't have to pay for yourself. Well, obviously, you need to have life insurance for survivors if they're depending on you. So in that sense, it's not a blessing. But just if you're single, it's a financial blessing. It's psychologically, it's terrible. You want to live to your maximum age of life and enjoy life. But the real risk here is financial risk is living to your maximum, living on cat food at age 100. So we want to make sure that we have that insurance, and getting that annuity, that high annuity that's coming on in every month, month after month, no matter how long you live, that's real insurance. What Rick was talking about. Let's go to secret 11 here. Well, we're going to talked about this before. Don't take retirement and widow's benefits at the same time. If you haven't taken one already, well, I mean, we already went through that story. So let me go to secret 12, which is the paramount secret here, which is don't trust Social Security. I have found that half of their advice is wrong, incomplete, or misleading. But the people at Social Security are absolutely sure that they know what they're talking about. They tend to be highly arrogant. I had one situation where a lady went to Social Security. She had read suggestions about what she should do from, well, she'd actually run my company's software, and it had suggested, here's what to do. And she goes to Social Security, and Social Security says, the lady there says, no, you can't do it. It's not feasible, not permitted. And she called me, and I said, please go back and have the Social Security agent call me. So the Social Security agent calls me, and she spends a half an hour screaming at me at the top of her lungs on the phone. And at the end of this, I said, and thanks very much for calling back. If you don't mind, I'd like to write down your name so that I can include it in my Forbes column that I'll be publishing in a half an hour that indicates the quality of your advice, which is totally wrong. And she hung up, she slammed the door of the phone, and she was very upset with me. And 10 minutes later, she called back and apologized. She said she talked to her supervisor. I was right, their software was right, the lady was right, she was wrong. And I didn't write anything for Forbes, but this is happening all the time. We have Social Security giving the wrong information. So you have to figure out ahead of time what to tell Social Security to do. You don't want to ask them any questions. That's a very strong statement, but it's based on many experiences that I've heard people tell me about. The last
Larry, if I can, I'd like to emphasize the other text on the slide, which is that when we say don't trust Social Security, I think that we're not saying that, or at least I'm not saying, you have more experience with this than I, but I would say that Social Security staff are not really trained to help people make the best lifetime decisions for themselves. They don't have fully accurate tools, and privacy rules may limit their ability to advise on the full family situation. So they're just not well positioned to provide good advice.
Yeah, their calculators. I mean, let's say you're 40, for example, you use their NEPIA calculators, the simplest calculator to figure out your own benefit, forgetting your family. So they won't be able, their calculators don't ask about your spouse or ex-spouses or anything like that, but they ask about you, and you put in your information, and then they crank out a benefit. But what they don't tell you clearly is that they're making two completely wacko assumptions. One is that there's not going to be any inflation in the country forever in the future. And we're seeing 7% inflation right now. So this is completely nuts. And Social Security is not inflation neutral entirely. It's got some things that are, but some things that are not inflation neutral. And certainly the benefit formula is not fully inflation indexed. It is up to age 60, earnings up to age 60 are indexed, but not beyond age 60. And then the other thing is that they assume there's not going to be any real wage growth in the economy. And so I've asked Steve Goss, who's a friend of mine, who's the chief actuary for Social Security. I said, Steve, why are you guys putting up these calculators, which are going to produce for like a 40-year-old an estimate of their benefit that's 20% too low? And his answer is that it's better to underestimate people's benefits than tell them the truth, because people are saving too little. So it's better to tell them they're not going to get that much from Social Security to encourage them to save more. That's basically where he's coming from, and I said, well, why don't you put out the accurate estimate and the other estimate, put them both up and indicate the assumption. It's too much for people to understand. So better we give them the wrong answer and kind of be big brother here. Well, if you're trying to plan for the future, you really need to know exactly what's right. You don't want to be 20% off with the benefit being too low by 20% versus, there's other cases I could give examples where they come up with estimates that are not 20% necessarily that high, but maybe 10% too high because of other mistakes that they're making in their calculator. So now the last thing that we want to, last couple things, maybe Rick, you want to take us through the last couple slides here?
Well, sure. First of all, I guess I would say that there are books here, and they're Larry's books. But I would say also with respect to Social Security that there is software available, very good software, and there are. I can say this, and Larry probably wouldn't, but there are multiple pieces of software that are available. One of them is from Larry's company, but there are others that are not, and I think any of them are helpful. I shouldn't say any, but if you get a good one, it will be helpful in identifying the benefits that you should receive, identifying circumstances that you might not think of, where you might not think that you are eligible, but where in fact you are. And that's very important because as we've said several times, Social Security will not come to you and say, here is a benefit you are owed. You have to file a claim. And if you don't file a claim, you won't get a benefit. So getting a book and getting software is very helpful. And I think, Larry, turning it back to you to show how software can help.
Okay, so we have these two programs. One is the $40 Maximize My Social Security tool, and there's a Maxify Planner. It does more lifetime planning than Social Security. The other one does just Social Security planning. So there, as Rick said, there's other tools available as well. I can't vouch for them because I haven't actually ever used them because their licenses preclude anybody who's not using them for their own Social Security calculations from looking at them. Let me just show you the power of our own Maxify planner software. It's just this case of a George. He lives in Delaware. He's single. He's retired. He earned $75,000 when he retired. He has $1 million in assets. He's taking Social Security immediately. What if we analyze in our software George waiting until 70? This raises his lifetime spending by $405,000, and that's a 22% permanent increase from his current age through age 100 because the software is planning very conservatively that he lives to his maximum age of life. And this decision to wait till 70 to collect, to go and file is completely riskless. It's pure alpha in Wall Street lingo. Alpha refers to getting a return with no risk, a higher, the bigger is alpha. That's the safe part of your return. If you have an asset, there's a safe component like the mean plus some term that's random. Every asset can be thought of that way or described that way. And the mean here, and there's no randomness whatsoever, is the alpha, and the benefit here is enormous. That's just for one single person, middle class person. So you can see how much money is at stake. Okay, let's. I think we're pretty much right at the top of the hour, so we can turn things back over to Tim and answer some questions.
Well, we are back, and we have a ton of questions. The first question I am not going to give to you, Rick, but on Secret 7, a lot of questions on not divorcing early. What are your secrets to a successful marriage? That's a different webinar. We'll attack that later. But some of the first questions really are around Social Security and it going bankrupt, and the concern that either individuals or clients of advisors have about delaying Social Security in the hopes that it will be there. Any tricks of the trade, thoughts, or comments on delaying Social Security to maximize your benefits with the thought and belief that at some point it might not be there, it might be means tested? What's your counsel on that?
So I think Larry will have things to say about this as well. I think the first thing I say is that I'm not a politician. I'm not a social scientist. I can't predict how political debates will come out. However, I think that the trustees have laid out a path for which I think is not unreasonable, for how the Congress might, when it finally gets around to it, decide to fund this gap. And if you apply that, if you simply divide the gap between people who are retired and people who are still working and who would pay more taxes, if you divide it evenly, then it's and look at the implications for people who are thinking about retiring, let's say now, or people who are thinking about retiring 5 years from now, it's still substantially advantageous to wait till 70. And I think Larry mentioned that even if you think the benefits will drop by 25%, it's still advantageous to wait till 70. So that's how I counsel. Larry, I'm sure, has his own views as well.
Well, so, in our software tools, you can specify your maximum age of life, which we have defaulted at 100. But for some people, that might be way too high in terms of what they think they really can make it to. But in addition, you can tell the program that the benefits will be cut starting at a certain date by a certain percentage, and they'll be permanently reduced. So you can run a scenario where the benefits aren't cut and compare taking benefits early versus waiting, and then run another scenario where the benefits are being cut and compare again taking benefits early versus waiting. And we're finding that even if benefits are cut by a whole lot, 25%, starting around 2030, that it still behooves you to wait. There's still a lot of money to be had by being patient. And
And I would say one more thing, which is that people have a bias toward starting early. And so they're likely to sort of game it so that it game their assumptions so that they come up with the answer that they should take the benefits early. And so I'd really encourage people who to get objective advice rather than trying to resolve it themselves, because there is, as I said, this bias, which I think is likely to produce the wrong result.
Right. And again, just on that topic, a slew of advisors here saying, quote unquote, I counsel my folks, very few of my clients wait till 70. They are itching to get the money. Any additional tricks of the trade? Would going through individual examples potentially help that?
I do have one thought here, which is that we start talking about this really early. We talk about this with people in their 40s, with people in their 50s, and we talk about it every year, and that allows us, I think, to surface objections, and I think that's helpful. I think also that the annuity analysis we found helpful. It was more helpful when there were commercial annuities and we could show what a great deal it was.
Right.
But you could still compare waiting to take Social Security to a standard non-inflation adjusted benefit, and you'll see that the payout rates for an inflation adjusted benefit are higher than commercially available payout rates for non-inflation adjusted annuities. And I think that's very powerful too.
Right.
Another thing I would say on this, Tim, is so if I have somebody who's, let's say, 62 in front of me, and I say, well, first thing I would say is, wouldn't you agree that we need to plan for you to live to your maximum age? Maybe we'll, if you want, have you plan to spend less as you get older, but we should plan to have you live to your maximum age, because if we count on you dying, let's say, at 90, when you could live to 100, you'll be living on cat food. You don't want that, do you? So they're going to say, no, we don't want that. So then now we'd say, the other thing we want to do is try and have you have the highest spending throughout this entire time. You agree with that? You want the highest living standard? Oh, yeah. So if we do it the way you want with Social Security, your living standard is going to be down here the rest of your life. If we use these other resources to get you to age 70 and then take Social Security, then you get to spend more, not just after age 70, but starting right now. So what do you want to do? You want to spend less right now for the rest of your life and keep it at that low level for the rest of your life? Or do you want to spend more right now and do it just and perfectly safely just by waiting 8 years to go and go online and apply for this benefit? It'll take you 10 minutes. I just turned 70. I just did it. I mean, I know how long it takes. And they're going to say, if you talk them through it that way, and you also show them numbers, so you need to have software that actually makes these calculations for them. And certainly Maxify does. There may be other tools that do as well. I think that's a way to convince people that this is the thing to do. I mean,
right.
You really don't have to, it's not a sacrifice. It's not like waiting to collect necessarily means you have to have a lower living standard in the short run. It's quite the opposite. It means you can have a higher living standard in most cases. Now, if you're cash constrained, you're not likely to be working with a financial advisor to begin with, if you're that cash constrained. So I think for most financial advisors' clients, this strategy will get the client around to agreeing to wait.
Excellent.
I think
Rick,
the
any
last thing,
thoughts on
Tim,
that?
I would say just one more thing,
Sure.
which is that we know that these decisions are not purely rational decisions, and there's a large you could either say behavioral or emotional aspect to this, and that's difficult to deal with. And I think attempting to understand the client's basis. Tell me about why you think that you need to take it at 62 or at 65 or full retirement age. Talk to me. Let's have a conversation about this decision, because it is a big decision. And I think that I'm not sure that people recognize just how large it is, that it's a hundreds of thousands for most of the clients that we deal with. This is a hundreds of thousands of dollars decision.
Yeah.
And people tend to make it a little bit casually. And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah. No, this is certainly a hot topic. The questions are coming in. So certainly around the solvency of Social Security, waiting to 70. Certainly people are responding to that. Also some concern about what about death before 70. So I think people are still wrestling with that. You do wait to 70, there's no guarantee. So any thoughts on how to, as you mentioned, a decision is emotional and rational. So there's the rational and the emotional concern about perhaps dying before you get $1. Any thoughts on that?
So here's what I would say to that same, let's say, we tell this client what I just said, you want to have a higher living standard starting right now, we should have you wait. And he says, well, what if I die, in 3 years? Well, the survivor benefits, if he's concerned about his spouse and his kids, to the extent they can collect widow or survivor benefits, those benefits will be higher by waiting. But the other thing to say to this person who's going to say, gee, if I die in 3 years, I will have spent my entire lifetime working. I went to work starting at 16. 12.4% of my pay I've been paying year in and year out since 16, and I'll get nothing. And I'm going to be so angry. And I would say to that person, no, you're going to be dead. You're going to be in heaven. You're not going to be angry at all. As soon as you die, you're going to be transported to heaven, and there's no regret in heaven. There's no unhappiness, and you also don't need money. It's not like you're going to be needing Social Security benefits in heaven to pay for things. It's all free. If you're in this other place after you die, you're not going to be able to use money there either, probably, to get out. So this is the wrong way to think about it. You have to think about the real danger here is not dying having not gotten these benefits. It's living on this very low level of benefits for basically forever, failing to die, being unwilling, unable to die.
Right.
That's the financial risk.
Right. So, a couple questions for our friends who are here for CE. You absolutely, at the top of the hour, you fulfilled your CE requirements as long as you responded yes to those prompts that I am watching. So, this is all optional. And as some of those folks peel off, and we now are in the optional time period, a couple questions. Kind of reacting to our content is, why is Social Security so complex? Anyone want to tackle that overarching question that we just got?
I'll let Larry take that one.
Well, it is trying to provide lots of things in one program. There's, first of all, it's forced saving. You're saving for retirement. That's the retirement benefit. It's forcing you to have something to live off of in retirement. There's insurance against dying young. There's life, survivor benefits. So there's life insurance being provided. There's divorce insurance, insurance against getting divorced. If you're the low earner, you can collect. There's longevity insurance. So it's trying to provide lots of different types of insurance. And then the actuaries, the guys who developed this, Bob Ball and Bob Myers, he was the chief actuary, and Bob Ball was the commissioner. And for years, these guys were running Social Security, and I think they viewed this as like this elaborate jigsaw puzzle, and this like separate language. If you read the program's operating manual system, you have to be, it's almost like written in a foreign language, and it all fits in together, and there's a certain logic to it and a beauty to it, even though the outcome is awful in terms of people not understanding at all what's going on and getting screwed royally. I think it really very much goes back to Bob Ball and Bob Myers getting a kick out of making this thing as complicated but as kind of neatly connected as possible. And they've been celebrated by people who are into social insurance as being the heroes of Social Security because they worked on the systems for so long. I think they made a complete mess of it, and they peaked to the point where the staff can't understand it, giving wrong advice. So,
I think you also have to recognize that while we've been taking a lot of digs at Social Security here, it is a very large asset for many people, and it is the basis or the sort of the foundation of retirement income for many people, and it does protect people from themselves in the sense that it provides income to people after they've retired. And if we left it to people on their own to save for retirement, I think that we would have many more people retiring in poverty than we do. So
I'm a big supporter of the basic principles of why we have, that we need forced saving, forced insurance, protection for lower earning spouses. But all this can be done in a very simplified version. It doesn't have to be done with hundreds of thousands of rules. So, I'll just clue everybody in that back in 2016, there was another presidential candidate apart from Trump and Clinton could have been elected president. That was me. I ran for president as a write-in candidate and had to register in enough states so I could legally be elected, which almost all the states. And I wrote a platform. The reason I ran was to write down what I thought economists think we should do to fix the country, including Social Security. So there's a book on my website, Kotlikoff.net, which is called You're Hired. It's not called You're Fired, it's called You're Hired. And one of the sections in that book is a plan for how to fix Social Security. It's one page. It's 10 bullets for how to do all the things that Social Security is trying to do without all this complexity. And also without all the sexism that the system has underneath the hood. So I agree with you, Rick. We can't leave it to people on their own, but we shouldn't be leaving it to bureaucrats to have a field day, because they just love bureaucracy and making up rules. That's also not the solution.
Well, Larry, you got 2 more votes from Doug and Patrick, by the way. So, we might see you up there in the Oval Office at some day.
I was too young last time around, so this time
Yeah,
I'll be about that age.
you got 2 votes right here.
Okay.
Continuing on, a couple other questions around maximizing number of years working. It's 35 if I'm not correct. And what does Social Security do if you stop working at 32 or 33? Is there a zeroing out of those years? Is that still correct?
They take your past covered earnings and they blow them up. They index them up to the age at which you're age 60. And then your earnings after age 60, they just write those down in terms of the actual dollars that you earned. So the indexation is adjusting for nominal wage growth based on average wage growth in the economy.
But Larry, I think that the question is, what if you don't have 35 years of earnings?
Okay,
What if you have only 32?
So they take all these numbers and they rank them from top to bottom.
Yep.
So some are nominal, the ones after age 60, and the ones before age 60 have been blown up. And they rank them from top to bottom. Now, if there are more than 35, they take the highest 35, and then they average them and figure out your benefit based on the average. If there are fewer than 35 non-zero numbers, they're just going to include zeros in the average. They're going to divide by 35. So this means that if you had, let's say, maybe you just worked for 20 years in covered employment, this means that if you go and earn more money this year, you'll be increasing your average and you'll be increasing your benefits for the rest of your life. So if you have like a very short work earnings history, maybe only like 10 years, for a lot of people, because the system is, the benefits are provided on a progressive basis, you can earn money this year, pay the FICA taxes, and the present value of the extra benefits could exceed the FICA taxes by a wide margin.
Right.
And the other interesting secret here is that if you're earning above the ceiling, which is around $140,000 right now, if you're a high earner and you're over 60, you are definitely going to be raising your highest average. You'll be adding a higher year to this 35 highest numbers. You're going to be replacing a low value with a higher value, and you're going to get a higher benefit next year. If you're collecting, let's say next year, maybe you're 68, there's no earnings test, you're still working, you're making $200,000. Your benefit next year is going to go up not just by the COLA, but by an additional amount because you've raised your average 35 years earnings. And that's called the recomputation of benefits. That's the provision. So you can keep earning money into your 90s. You can be 99 and raising your Social Security benefits. Let's say you earn $200,000. You're a lawyer. You're working 99. I know lawyers 99 years old who are working still.
Right. And
they're raising the benefit every year.
Right. So just to confirm, a couple questions. Folks saying that it does make sense to max out the ceiling, which is around $140,000, to keep working to get to those 35 high years. And just to clarify, if you have 34 or 33, the other years are zeroed and averaged out. Is that correct? Okay. Very good. And one last question on when do survivor benefits stop accruing, or do they always keep accruing?
As long as you keep raising your benefit by raising your average 35 highest earnings number. This is called the average index monthly earnings number. But again, not everything going into that calculation is actually indexed.
Yeah.
It's only the stuff up to age 60. As long as that keeps going up, your survivor benefits for your spouse, your widow and your widower, or your ex-spouse, Your divorced widow or divorced widower, those will go up. The benefits for surviving kids will not be increased.
Yeah.
Well, let me hang on a second.
Yeah.
I'll take that back. Your full retirement benefit will be increased as well, even though you might be beyond full retirement age, and that will increase the benefits going to those survivors. And then there's also the question of when you take your survivor benefit. If you're a widow, if you take it early, it's going to be reduced. But that might be the optimal strategy. You take your widow's benefit first and your retirement benefit at 70. We're talking through that case. So you can influence the widow's benefit. The person who's going to die can influence, and the person who's going to survive, they can influence what they get as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, gentlemen, we have a tremendous number of individual questions that we're going to probably have to respond to individually. A lot of case studies, a lot of great comments. We've covered marriage, divorce, death, all the great stuff today. So a lot of fun comments from the audience, even a little bit of politics in there too. So we are coming up on our final 30 minutes here. So I want to turn it over both to Rick and Larry to see if you have any final thoughts. Again, as the questions keep coming in, we're going to respond to them real time. So final thoughts before we close out today and get ready for tomorrow.
I guess I would say that I just reiterate that the retirement benefit claiming decision is a major decision, and it's not one to undertake lightly or casually, and it's one to think through very carefully. And getting someone other than yourself to help you think it through, someone who's objective, I think is very helpful.
Yeah, I would ditto that. This is probably, for most people, this is the biggest retirement decision they're going to make, apart from deciding when they're going to stop working, the biggest financial decision of their retirement. So it's much, we spend so much time focused on, what stocks to buy and how to play the market. But the idea that Social Security is a financial asset that we can actually control, it's so different from our brokerage account, but we can control it through these other mechanisms. It's like a machine with different, it's like a car, but it doesn't look like a car, but you can move it. And here, figuring out what benefits to take and when to take them can make all the difference in the world to your lifestyle. And we just showed an example where waiting to 70 rather than taking benefit at 62 is raising the single person's living standard by 20%, 1/5, starting at age 62, possibly for the next 38 years if they make it to 100. That's the program, that we ran assumed that they're going to live to 100. So it's, how do you get that kind of an increase in well-being from, you can't count on the stock market to deliver that.
Right.
Tim, if I may, I have a question for
please.
Larry. I'm wondering if there are any studies about what percentage of children who are entitled to a child benefit actually collect it. Because my guess is that it's a relatively low percentage, that it's an underclaimed benefit.
Yeah, I haven't seen any studies, but I'm sure that's an important study to do, especially with all the benefits. But we have seen studies of other kinds of benefits the government's providing, like like food stamps and Medicaid benefits. There's lots of people that earned income tax credit. Lots of people that don't know that these benefits are available and don't take them. And then some people don't take them because they just don't want to be involved with the government or don't want to have any stigma of taking help from the government. But if the government's going to help themselves to your income, you might as well take what's they're giving to you when you need it, because we're all in this collective pie. We're in effect through the government, we're insuring each other, and those of us who die young are our uncollected benefits are being used to pay people who die very late. That's the pooling of risk that underlies all insurance.
Right.
But this has been a great privilege, Tim, to address DFA advisors, and many of our clients and Rick's clients are with us today. And it's I hope everybody comes tomorrow to the next presentation. We're going to talk about finding a bunch of other safe ways to raise your client's living standard or your own living standard if you're not working with an advisor. But thanks so much for this opportunity.
Excellent. Well, it's my turn. If you could look at my screen here, I have no more questions, but I have a screen full of thank yous. So my turn to thank you. So many folks have learned something, are focusing on learning more, looking at doing more research. So you have absolutely impacted at least 30 or 40 people here who are sending their thanks to you. So on behalf of them, thank you so much. You stole my thunder. Same time, same place, knock on wood, knock on ice storms. Raising a household's living standard at no risk tomorrow, same place. Please fill out your surveys, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you from everyone at Dimensional.
Great.